Off the top of your head, how many characters from My Hero Academy's Class 1A can you name? How many of them can you draw from memory with no references to remind you? These are the questions I'm going to ask myself today. While I already know the answer to the first one, I was wondering recently just how well I remembered the class visually, and not just their names or actions in the story. Considering how much I look at Horikoshi's art for inspiration, I'm going into this challenge thinking I should have built up a pretty solid visual library for everyone by now. Because something about me is that I've got a pretty solid visual memory, or rather, I'm very good at being able to memorize a design if I've drawn it at least once before. I think it has something to do with maybe a mixture of muscle memory, but also I think it's something about having to look at a design in detail in order to draw it myself commits it to my brain better than just looking at it without necessarily consciously considering it. For further context, I have not drawn most of Class 1A before. Mostly I've drawn Katsuki, Deku, and a few others that I will mention as they come. I have also not drawn most of the class in their hero outfits either, even the ones that I have drawn before, which is why I'm making that another part of this challenge. To draw everyone in their hero outfit, rather than just their UA uniform, makes it more interesting for you guys to watch, and more of an actual challenge for me. But if I truly cannot remember what a uniform looks like, I will allow myself to cop out to the UA uniform and just consider it a point deduction of some sort. Basically, we're thinking of drawing the hero outfit as bonus points, and non-hero outfits as regular points. We are who's lining this whole thing. Everything is made up, and the points don't matter. Also, you will notice that this video is literally about an hour long, because I somehow underestimated how long it would take to draw and showcase the process of drawing 18 individual characters when I came up with this idea. These took way longer than they should have, and that is simply because I'm a perfectionist and needlessly verbose, but hey, at least there's timestamps. To kick things off, I started with the easiest of the bunch first to keep the energy high, Uraraka. She's the easiest for me personally since I've drawn her the most aside from Katsuki and Deku. She's just a good character to draw on the fly because I like her round shapes and hair a lot. She's memorable and has a face very similar to Deku, so I don't have trouble with her. That being said, I've never drawn her in her hero outfit before, so this was sort of a new experience. To start, I knew her face and head pretty well. I love her long hair swoopies, I know her little bangs on her forehead are pretty small and simple by comparison. She's got round eyes, round cheeks, and tiny little eyebrows. As for her hero outfit, the first thing that comes to mind are the floaty-like devices on her wrists. And the biggest uncertainty I had about those was the little headphone-shaped bit on them. I think it's some sort of handle or something, but as I was drawing it, I just thought it looked like a pool floaty wearing headphones, so I left it at that. As for the rest of the outfit, I know that Uraraka has those two little dots on the chest of her suit, like how Katsuki has the two dots on the X of his chest since they share a costume designer. I also know that she has that weird low-slung belt on her hips, but it's not a proper belt that goes all the way around and instead is more like another inflatable inner tube that wraps around her lower back. And I say that, but technically she has multiple versions of her suit and some of them have the buckle and others don't, but I didn't remember that at the time and I just drew the version that I could recall. For the pattern on the suit, I know it doesn't have a complicated one, but I wasn't sure where exactly the colors separate, like on the sleeves or how low down it went on her stomach. In the end, I was pretty sure her legs were just solid black, so I stopped the pink below her belly button and just above the legs. She's kinda got a vest-like situation going on in that regard. Moving on to the boots, I knew that they were just a solid color shoe with no design or pattern on them. They're just big, panty and stocking styled shoes where they get thicker as they go down rather than taper. She also has tiny heels on them, which you can watch me struggle to draw correctly since it just didn't look right with the angle I drew them at. I didn't draw that part all that correctly, they are not nearly as noticeable as I thought they were. Moving back up again, the part that I was dreading from the start, which is Uraraka's helmet and visor. I absolutely blanked on what that looked like, and I only had vague memories of its general shape. I could remember it being almost ribbon-like on the sides where the darker pink parts are, but I couldn't remember exactly how it attached to her head, and how big it was, or how low on her head it rested. I tried for a while to logic it as best as I could, using the same wraparound pool floaty shapes from before, but it still just seemed like I was missing major elements and shapes. Ultimately, I decided she doesn't always have this part of the suit on, at least not in the promotional material, so I left it out of the final piece entirely. I mean, at least we can see her hair better this way, right? And that's it for Uraraka. She trips me up with that headpiece, which I definitely did not pay enough attention to like the rest of her outfit, but overall I think she's recognizably herself and has her most notable features included. Like her belt, she has different versions of her wrist bubbles that I didn't even realize before, so I definitely mix and match some of her outfits unintentionally. Also, as a disclaimer, only the drawing parts of this challenge were blind. I wasn't planning on coloring any of the sketches at all, but I added them after the fact since I thought it would look nicer. But by then, I had already seen the characters again, and I just wanted to make that clear since I think the colors make them look more accurate sometimes. I only included both so that you can see the difference for yourselves. Next up, I'm going for a harder one to keep me on my toes. We're doing Aoyama. Now, unlike with Uraraka, I started this one with a pose first and some vague shapes that I remember him having, like his boots going up to his knees, his little light reflector things on his arms, legs, and stomach, his swoopy hair and swoopier cape, and those big flashy sunglasses. Once my little stick Aoyama is done, I go into the details of his face and head that I know I remember the most. First of all, his eye shape I remember being more flat. They're pretty rectangular, basically, rather than being more angular or round. He's got his little eyelashes and tiny, haughty eyebrows. He's got that silly V-shaped mouth that always makes him look a bit smug. I love his face when he's being silly or when he's admitting to crimes. His hair I think I had a bit of doubts on when it came to his bangs and the exact shape of them, but when I look at it now I think I remember the details a lot better than I thought I would. It's a pretty memorable hairstyle, I guess. I wasn't exactly sure how long his hair was though. I thought it looked good on the longer side though, so I left it like that and moved on. Then the visor. I knew it was there, I just couldn't forget it if I tried, but I couldn't shake the feeling that it wasn't as smooth as I originally drew it. It just didn't look right, but I didn't experiment with it too much, because at that point I convinced myself I was overthinking it, and if I got too lost in adding details that may or may not be there before I even got to the really hard parts, I was just gonna be wasting my time. So I moved on, and now we get to the torso, which I knew was sort of like medieval armor, but not really. It's like simplified armor that flares out at the bottom and makes a more flashy silhouette. It also flares out on the neck area where he has this big Katsuki winter costume, Best Jeanist-esque turtleneck thing going on. Not sure what to call that, but I knew it was there at least. And obviously I knew he had the big circle on his stomach where he shoots out his navel laser. I wasn't sure if there were other details on the armor, or if he had a belt on it. I was pretty sure he had a belt because he normally has a belt to deal with his quirk even outside of his hero costume, but I didn't remember it for the life of me what it could look like, so I just kept it simple and acted as if it was just a regular leather belt. I was pretty sure I was wrong, but it was as good as I was gonna get. As for the details and accents on the armor, that part I knew wasn't right, even while I was drawing it, but I couldn't just leave it blank or it would look even more wrong. In the end, I think there's definitely a lot of pizzazz and detail missing in my final result. He's the type to have a lot of unnecessary flair that was way too easy to overlook. Not bad overall, I wasn't all that confident about it going in, so this is a win for me. Next up, I'm keeping the difficulty going with Kota. And like most people who read this story, I don't pay a whole lot of attention to him. He's just very much a background character, not one of the most prominent classmates or even shown to be all that close to the main characters. Nonetheless, he's there and he's got a strangely shaped head, and that's what I'm starting with. Since he has a mutant type quirk, he's sort of shaped like a tiny mountain. At least that's how I remember him looking. He's gotten some more attention in the most recent chapters of the story, not to give any spoilers, but I do have him a little bit more fresh in my mind because of that. That being said, I still cannot even begin to remember what his hero outfit looks like. No clue. My brain is empty in that department, so we are taking our first point deduction and just drawing Kota in his UA uniform. Sorry buddy, I just can't even imagine what your outfit should look like. Like he talks to animals, but what could his outfit even need for that? I don't think he walks around with like a megaphone or anything, I think he just whispers. But beyond that, he strikes me as the type of hero like Jiro or Kaminari who don't really have hero outfits, but rather just an outfit that they think looks cool and doesn't really get in the way. Maybe I should have just drawn him in a V-neck like Kaminari and called it a day, but I took the boring route and here's what we got. Oh, also, this is off script, but I want to point out, isn't it interesting that there's 2 Kodas on the cast, it's just spelled different? Like, they already have they have a Koda that's more relevant in the story than the Koda in Class 1A. Like, they have Koda, the kid that Deku saved at the training camp, and who has that little horn hat, and his parents died, and he has a little water gun quirk. Koda's the best, but not this Koda. Sorry, Koda. I'm talking about the Koda with the cute hat. Maybe if you put on a cute hat, maybe people would like you more. Koda, if you knocked Mineta off a ladder, people would remember you more. That's all I'm saying. And that's that. Koda's mouth is much flatter than I remember it being, and I definitely didn't quite get the shapes of his head right, but in general, I think he looks alright. For anyone who also doesn't remember what Koda's hero outfit looked like, here it is. Literally don't think I would have remembered this if you gave me a whole year to think on it. Sorry, Koda. Next, I went for another easy one to give myself a break. Tsuyu, or Froppy, a character that a lot of people love the design of. And I'm with you, I love her look, so I was pretty confident about it as a whole. First, I drew her very memorable face with her long, straight hair that segments into 3 areas around her face. I included her long tongue, and then I moved up to the goggles that she has on her head. I knew they were kind of like binoculars, so I knew the cylinder shapes on the sides were correct, but the middle part that connects the cylinders I was much less sure about. I couldn't remember if it was just a straight up hat kind of thing, or if it was more of a visor, where you could still see the hair on the top of her head. I tried a couple things, but in the end I thought the whole thing was too big and bulky to show the top of her head either way, and I left it more like a hat, even though I am pretty sure it has to be a visor since they're goggles and they need to be able to pull down to go over her eyes. But now that I think about it, I don't think I have ever seen her wear those things for practical use. For Tsuyu's bodysuit, I knew she just had a wetsuit, so I didn't really have a whole lot of bells and whistles to worry about. I recall her having some sort of vest, chest strap thingy going on, and while I wasn't completely sure of the details, I was sure it was there. A lot of the characters have little shoulder straps or chest straps actually, so if something ever seems missing, I think those are a good go-to guess to fill the space. Her hair is long and thick, and ties together in that adorable bow shape at the end. It's not a real bow, but literally her own hair tying itself together into that shape. I have long hair myself, and if I tried to do that, it would just become a tangled mess. Perks of Tsuyu having straight hair, I guess? If you have straight hair, let me know in the comments if you can tie it into a bow without tangling it up to high hell, actually. I need to pull this. For her shoes, or whatever you'd consider these things, I know it looks like frog toes with the really long finger part and ends in a more circular shape. I wasn't exactly sure how they attached to the shoe though. Just that the toe parts were different color than the rest of the shoe, so I needed it to be segmented off somehow. I left it as just toes, basically. Like weird toe socks, but not really. I didn't remember her lower half having a lot of color or detail, so I just kept it simple. Her gloves, I know, have those big cartoonish buckles on them, looking a lot like the big flashy gloves that Sonic characters have sometimes. I think of Vector's gloves actually, which aren't the same color but do have a similar large buckle. I guess aquatic themed characters just like this look, huh? Throughout this drawing in particular, you'll see me sort of restart and readjust the pose a lot, and that has less to do with me remembering the design and more with me just not liking how the drawing was turning out regardless. Near the middle and end, I was really tempted to just start over entirely, but I needed to draw like 14 more kids after this, and the whole point of this video was to test my memory and not create flawless illustrations even though my brain was screeching at me for it feeling wrong and to fix it. But I sucked it up and worked with what I had, and here we have it. I don't hate it like I did while I was working on it, which is good. It's still not my favorite of the bunch, but it certainly was a lesson in stepping away from a drawing and coming back to it to view it with fresh eyes later. It really helps, and I highly recommend it if you start getting frustrated with your work and you can't quite figure out why. But because this was meant to be a challenge, I didn't want to walk away without finishing it and somehow risk seeing her somewhere, however unlikely that would be. In the end, I think I mostly got lost in the details, like the exact look of her shoes or how her goggles attached to her head, In general though, she's recognizable, and I think she's got most of her notable traits correct, even if the details aren't perfect. After the unexpected emotional roller coaster that was Tsuyu, I went for someone who I felt pretty confident about. Kaminari. I love him. He's got such a pretty face. I always loved how Horikoshi gave him those little eyelashes. He's the sociable pretty boy, and his hero outfit definitely fits that. That being said, my biggest worry for this one was actually the hair. I was pretty sure I knew the shape of it in general, but it just didn't feel right as I was working on it. I think it might have been the volume of the hair being too flat or close to the head, since Kaminari's hair is spiky and messy, but it's not like too separated. I needed it to feel more close together, varied in shape, and generally look less like several long triangles bunched together. I come back to it again later, but for now, I leave it behind and move on to the body. And kinda like I said before, Kaminari has less of a hero outfit and more of a I think this makes me look cool as hell, so I'm gonna wear it to work kind of outfit. He's got the black jacket with that flashy popped collar, and it doesn't, to my memory at least, have a lot of details to it apart from the white stripes accenting the arms. For those, I wasn't really confident about the length or placement of the stripes, but I added them regardless, completely forgetting that they're not just stripes, but lightning bolts that match his electricity theme. Totally slipped my mind while I was drawing it. Kaminari also has that similar shoulder strap that a lot of the characters have, where it separates the body from the arm. Underneath, he's just got on a white v-neck t-shirt with no other details. Nothing complicated, I mostly just had a hard time drawing it in a way that I liked. For his pants, I was pretty sure he just had regular pants on that sort of matched the jacket's sleeves from before. The belt, however, I felt less sure about. I knew the shape of it, like the little parts on his hips, but I didn't know exactly what they were or how it connected other than that. Like, did it have a buckle or any other pouches? I ended up reasoning that since the rest of his outfit was just regular clothes and I was pulling a blank, I'll just make it a regular white belt with weird hip attachments and call it a day. Then we move on to the shoes, which I second-guessed myself a little bit on, solely because I just don't understand this part of his design. Like, just as a general first thought when looking at Kaminari, you'd probably think that this guy would absolutely wear combat boots, and not, he just wears regular, non-interesting loafers with the rest of this flamboyant outfit. Which he does. He wears the most uninteresting shoes ever in his hero outfit. As I was drawing this though, I was at least envisioning them to be black in color, since I thought it would at least match the rest of the outfit and blend in rather than stick out. I'm a manga reader and I don't really pay much attention to the anime side of things much, you know? So imagine my surprise when I look at the picture of him afterwards when I'm done and I come to the realization that his shoes are brown in his hero outfit. It's like a dark brown, so it's not like immediately noticeable, I guess, but when I colored my version it just stuck out so strangely to me. It just looks like he kept his school shoes on. What's even weirder to me is that there is no detail to them, like I added. They're just smooth dress shoes. Are you going ballroom dancing later, Kaminari? I'm trying not to make a what are those joke, but you're making it hard. Anyway, shoe debacle aside, right at the end I was looking at him and thinking something was missing, and it wasn't shoe related. But then I remembered, he has those big blue glasses! For Kaminari as a whole, I didn't really struggle to remember the outfit looked like. The most notable thing I forgot was the little radio thing that he has on his ear, but at least I remembered the glasses. I feel like that would have been embarrassing to miss, since his design is already so uncomplicated that those are probably the most recognizable part of it. He also has those things on his arms and wrists I forgot about completely. His mini Yu-Gi-Oh! Dual Disc, if you will. I wouldn't have remembered what it looked like even if I did remember to draw it, honestly. Next, we're doing another one of my favorites from the class, Mina. This is another easy one, since I already know Mina's design pretty well and have drawn her before. Never in her hero outfit, but I've drawn her face at least a couple times. She's got similar hair to Izuku, but her curls are divided into smaller, more coiled segments than his, which are more chunky in comparison. Mina's hair also covers her ears and curls over her cheeks a bit. Her horns I knew weren't right when I drew them, but I still couldn't quite remember how exactly they bend, and I forgot to go back to them after I was done. Her outfit has always been funny to me because it's so irrelevant to her quirk. she's got acid that secretes from her bright pink skin, so her response to that is a blue and purple leopard print leotard, paired with a tan, sleeveless cropped jacket and brown boots. And on top of all that, she's got a white eye mask, perhaps just to make it seem a bit more like a hero uniform rather than just a regular outfit on top of a skin-tight bodysuit. It is so nonsensical and mismatched and needlessly flashy, and it's perfect for her because it's loud and eye-catching like she is. It's such a teenager and frankly human kind of thing to want to dress in a way that tells others what you're like, and to want to flaunt your individuality as loudly as you can and sometimes all at once, so I fully believe that Mina chose this outfit to get across her personal style, even while on the job. And because of her quirk, she doesn't wear gloves or anything else, so her arms are bare for her acid to secrete from, so nothing complicated to remember there. But that's her. I like drawing this one a lot. Mina's a lot of fun, and I knew the design well since it's pretty hard to forget with how ridiculous it is. I decided to color her acid pink instead of just making it white or translucent like the anime colors it. I think it looks better and seems more cohesive and unique to her in that way. On top of that, Mina is one of the characters with a winter version of her outfit, and it's just the same thing with slightly longer sleeves. Not too big of a difference, so there wasn't much to mix up in designs. I went with the summer design, but both are very cute. Next up, we have Shota! His hair I was actually nervous about, since this kind of hairstyle I think is really easy to make either too flat or too smooth, or just not very cohesive if you try and fluff it up too much. Horikoshi is so good at making Shoto's hair really dynamic and pretty, whether it's lying flat or blowing around, but I really like that wilder look, so I was aiming for that here. Not too dramatic, but enough to get some strands to cross over each other and imply a bit of volume or movement. I make sure to put the scar on the correct side, and while I do go back and mess with his face and hair a little bit more later, for now I leave it as it is and I get to the harder parts. I think his outfit is, generally speaking, pretty simple, but also easy to miss details, and therefore have it look wrong and not quite know why it looks wrong. He's also had multiple iterations of this outfit with slight to major differences between them, so I think it's really easy to mix and match several outfits into one, but I tried to recall his most current outfit as of the manga right now. I was mostly envisioning that one image of him that Horikoshi drew and colored where he's standing beside Toya. You guys know the one. He's got that blue, not a bodysuit really, it's also not just a jacket or anything. Whatever it is, it's mostly just a solid color with a T-shaped area on the chest and stomach. I guess it sort of slims the figure and breaks up the monotony of the rest of the blue. I wasn't sure if it had a lot of detail to it, so I just kept it simple. His belt, the first thing that comes to mind are obviously his 5 weenies that dangle off the belt loops. I'm pretty sure that only a couple are visible from the front though, not all 5. But other than that, I honestly have no idea what the rest of his belt looks like. You can just see me put a bunch of question marks on the buckle area since I wasn't sure what to put there, and I leave it for a while to move on to a different area in hopes that something would jog my memory. It didn't. The belt stays blank. He's got those shoulder pads a lot of them have, but he's a little bit more similar to the kind that Kirishima has, where it's kind of like a harness that has little raised rectangles on them. I'm not sure what they are, but I know that they're there, so I try my best to recreate them in this downshot angle that I arbitrarily started working towards. I know he's got these sort of glove-like devices on his hands and forearms, but I really could not remember the exact details or shapes of them. He's not quite got fingerless gloves on because they're not really gloves at all, so I just kind of cropped them below the knuckles and moved on to the part that goes up the forearm, which I also didn't quite remember the details of. I was pretty sure it was segmented though, and not just a smooth shape, so he gets this funky, chunky, bangle-esque arm brace on both hands before I call it a day. But his pants are simple, not patterned or anything, just a little baggy and tucked into his boots, which are just a solid white color with some raised details on the tops of his feet. This one was not my proudest, not only because I missed some details on a character that's very prominent, a character that I personally love. But also, I just didn't like how it turned out in general. I definitely think I could do a much better job and do Todoroki a little bit more justice. But I told myself that I wouldn't redraw any of them, wouldn't start over, I'd just stick with it, so I stuck with it. I couldn't give him special treatment. Sorry, Shoto, I didn't do it to sue you, so I can't do it to you. Next up, we have Ojiro. This one took me the least amount of time so far. Only 30 minutes to whip up this gross tail boy. He's not gross. His flesh tail is what's gross. I just can't get over it, and it just looks so much worse in color when you see the flesh tone and the big, bushy hair at the end. Ugh. Anyway. So, Ojiro. Not a hard design to remember. He is one of the characters who has a winter and a summer outfit, but I honestly forgot that when I was drawing this, so I guess I kinda went for his summer outfit unintentionally. He's got the intentionally background character type of face, with not a lot of detail or notable features to stand out from a crowd. His hair is sort of slicked back and kinda lumpy, maybe. Apart from his face, his hero outfit I remember being pretty much just a karate gi, so that's what I drew. If there are other details to it, then I sure didn't remember them, and for the most part I was right. However, apparently he has fluff on one side of his collar, which, I'm gonna be honest, I thought was just him resting his tail on his neck this whole time. Like, I thought that was just his actual tail, not a motif of the tail on his shirt collar. You learn something new every day. Where I felt confident about the gi, I did kinda guess on the gloves and shoes. I wasn't 100% sure if Ojiro had gloves or not, but it just felt like he'd be extra naked without them, so I gave him some generic black fingerless gloves, and apparently not black, but blue. Which just kinda feels like Kaminari's shoes part 2. For the shoes, part of me was wondering if he wore sandals for some reason. And I was drawing his face and I was just thinking about the shoes, and ultimately I thought, 1, I don't want to draw sandals right now, and 2, that seems way too impractical for hero work, so I just gave him some slip-ons and hoped it matched his plain look well enough. It doesn't look wrong, but I did in fact guess wrong, because apparently Ojiro wears boots, short boots with a little swirl pattern on them. Didn't remember that at all. His belt is also much larger and more detailed than I remembered, with a similar blue swirl pattern on it. I really thought he just had a black belt on, and that was it. Like, I really felt like I had that one down pat. Inaccuracies aside, I think I did pretty well, but mostly since there's not a whole lot to miss with this design in the first place. Either way, thank you Ojiro for being a quick and easy one. You are so real for that. Next up we have Tokoyami. Who doesn't like this guy? What a cool design. Bird head on a human body should not look as cool as it does, but here we are. This one is pretty straightforward ultimately. Once I got past the head and felt satisfied with that part, the rest of the body wasn't all that complicated. That being said, I did mess with the head a bit, first trying to show both eyes, but then finding that he just looked better with only one. I think it's in part because of the angle worked best with just one, but it also got me thinking, can you even see both of his eyes when he's not looking at you dead on? I think that generally keeping his head shape pretty simple leads to the best effect, and adding the depth that a more human face would have isn't really useful to it. I was actually a bit worried about him though, because I know what his head looks like, but I was kind of worried about the hero outfit. I wasn't sure if he had more going on for him than I remembered, but I was pretty sure he was just wearing like a regular t-shirt and pants underneath a cape. Like, I was pretty sure that's all it was. He has bracelets on, but I don't even think he wears gloves, unlike a lot of the cast. He does have a belt though. At least I think he does, because I'm pretty sure most of the cast does have tactical belts as well. Belts and gloves are pretty common for a lot of these guys, so even if I can't remember the exact details or shape of it, I at least know that it's there. With the rest of the outfit, the shoes weren't hard to remember, tall boots that are just as unpatterned and uncomplicated as the rest of his clothes. Truly, most of the work that went into this one was just drawing him in a pose that I liked. Like, he seems kinda naked, but that's just how I remember him looking, so this is how he turned out. I remember a lot of his details from the scene where he's rescuing Hawks from Dabi after Twice is killed. I love those panels, so I remember it really well, and this is what I remember Tokoyami wearing in those panels, so let's see how well my memory holds up. I also included Dark Shadow, because it just felt wrong not to include him since he's another sentient being and not just a quirk. So, Tokoyami and Dark Shadow. You get a 2-for-1. I wanted to try drawing that weird demonic bird head. I didn't really go too hard into the cross-hatching style that Horikoshi typically draws Dark Shadow with, which is really cool to look at. But I was like, not doing that. You get the general gist of what he looks like. Here he is. Emo Bird Kid and his sometimes violent imaginary friend. I love him, the Pokemon-headed weirdo. I think that's the part that's least accurate, actually, is his head shape should be a bit sharper than I made it. I like this one a lot. It's definitely one of my favorites of the bunch, and made me realize that Tokoyami is a lot of fun to draw. Next up is Momo, the brains of the class. For the face, I put some energy into trying to perfect the regal, intimidating look that she has, the angle of the lashes and brows, and the calm but confident expression that shows off her leadership skills. I really love her hairstyle too. It seems so put together by being tied up, but it's also kind of wild and unpredictable, which doesn't really suit her personality, but it does her quirk, which is so versatile in nature. I like it. She's got her hair up, but it's still not quite contained, especially in that long bit in the front that is free from the rest of the ponytail. For the shape of the ponytail, I know it's spiky and sort of fans out in a round shape, though I wasn't exactly sure how to achieve it the way that Horikoshi does. I ended up with a choppy, stylized version of it, and I think it's recognizable enough. Her outfit is very controversial, that's for sure. Hard to forget with how ridiculous it is in both concept and execution. I decided to focus more on the cape because of it. Let's cover this poor girl up as much as we can, you know? The cape has a magician kind of feeling to it, with how it flares out at the collar and looks sort of mysterious. It's tied together with a gem-like thing on the front, which adds to that effect, at least in my opinion. Underneath that, she has another little strap thing, which connects both sides of her shoulders, similar to the harness that Tsuyu has. I didn't get to draw that part because the cape is in the way, but that is what that connects to. The leotard part is basically a one-piece swimsuit with a big cut down the chest, and it ends right below the belly button, leaving her arms, legs, and stomach bare so she can use her quirk. The leotard itself has minimal details from what I can remember. There are sort of stripes on the hip area. I couldn't really remember if it was one set of stripes or if it was multiple, but the one felt like enough, so I left it at that. Then, slung really low on her hips, she has that big, bulky life preserver looking thing that has a flap on her back and holds a literal book on it like she's a walking bookshelf. I didn't draw that part, but I wanted to acknowledge that it's there because I just think it's funny. This part I always found a bit strange. It just seems like it should restrict her movement with how low on her hips it is, and how bulky it is. But despite it all, she's powering through her various fashion disasters waiting to happen like a champ. For her shoes, Momo has simple red boots, and boom, she's done! I actually didn't remember that her boots have a bit of a curved top to them, where they're almost more heart-shaped, where I just made them kind of lay flat the whole way around. Other than that, I pretty much got her right, other than I did forget the turtleneck area that her leotard has underneath the cape. I thought it was just a swimsuit, and I forgot that it had a neck like that, even underneath the extra collar that the cape gives her. Good thing I went for the cape, I guess, because I forgot about it. I tried to draw her as respectfully as I could while still drawing the actual design and not just draping her in a cape because that felt a little bit like cheating. Still, I'm sorry, women. Next up is Sato. This one, I would say I'm surprised at how easy it was for me, considering I am not a big fan of Sato and have never drawn him before. But honestly, I think it's just because Sato's suit is reminiscent of an ugly, much less detailed Deadpool suit. And boy, do I know how to draw a Deadpool suit. It's kind of like when SpongeBob draws the details and then erases them to draw a circle. I'm basically just stripping bare a concept that I already know. Like, I wasn't sure what his belt situation looked like, but I just drew a dumbed-down version of the pouches and buckle that I tend to draw on Deadpool, and sure enough, it looked right. Like, it's not actually right, but it's pretty close, so I'm happy with it regardless. Even the little lines that go down the left and right sides of his suit are similar to the placement on Deadpool's. I knew his suit didn't have pretty much any other details to it, and he just has white gloves and shoes. The shoes I actually added too much detail to, thinking to myself, okay, he can't be that simple. There's probably like buckles on it or something at least, but nope, he actually just has solid white boots that don't even protrude from his suit and blend in more like a full body suit, booties and all. And you'll probably notice that I did not draw the lips the way that he is originally designed with. Let it be known that I do know what they look like, but I just refuse to draw them that way. That style of lips is just way too loaded with bad history for me to feel comfortable drawing them, and I just didn't. Sorry if that's not really the point of the challenge, but I could not bring myself to do it. As for his face, I definitely drew his eyes too big and too far apart. He should also have bigger eyebrows than I gave him, but I also technically shouldn't have drawn eyebrows at all, since his hero suit doesn't actually show them through the fabric. I wasn't thinking about that as I drew it though, I guess. So yeah, it's not exact. I didn't get the belt 100% right, but I think it's pretty damn close, considering I look at this dude as little as I possibly can. He's not exactly a memorable character, but he's simple and garish in design, and I guess that makes him memorable enough. I won't complain about another easy one. Next is Jiro, another one I felt pretty confident about, since she's a popular character that Horikoshi draws a lot, so I'm familiar with her design. I've never drawn her myself before though, surprisingly. Gonna be honest, I was not exactly sure how to draw her hair. I know she has the straight across bangs and the two longer pieces on either side of her head, but it's also kind of choppy all over, and it seems really easy to mess up and make too complicated or lose the recognizability. In the end, I think it worked out, and a lot of it got covered by her headphones and jacket anyway, but still. The jacket's lapel is what got me the most, I think. I tried a few different attempts before realizing that I was just drawing Kaminari's jacket collar, which isn't the same as Jiro's. While he and Jiro have similar outfits, Jiro's collar is more of a... I don't know what to call it exactly, but it's reminiscent of a cape's collar more than a lapel. And once I realized that, it worked much better, especially for the pose I was working with. Overall, I remember the little details generally, since, again, it's a pretty simple design and mostly memorable because of those little details. The tattered look to the bottom of her shirt, the red makeup on her cheeks, the choker, the headphones. The thing I missed, but more so because I didn't really know how to draw them, rather than I forgot about them, is those little, like, computer mouse shaped things that's on the top of her hands. You know what I'm talking about. I don't know what they do, but she has them, and I didn't include them because she's not always depicted with them in the first place. Sort of like how I left out Uraraka's helmet. Look, deduct a point if you want, okay? I'll take that loss. It's my challenge. I can make these decisions. Something I forgot was actually that her shirt is much baggier than I realized. It's longer on her torso, so the tatters are over her pants, which is why they have the black effect that they do, rather than just like showing off her bare stomach. Makes sense, but I didn't think about it before coloring it. I also forgot that she has tears on the top part of the shirt too. I also forgot her little cheek paint changed over time and is much more appealing now than the way I did it here. The paint marks in her current outfit are a lot fuller, and it fits her face better than just the little teardrop shapes. She looks a bit less like Hisoka from Hunter x Hunter these days, so that's always a plus. I'm surprised I didn't remember it this way, honestly, but I guess I just didn't pay as much attention to them in general. Mistakes aside, this was a fun one. Moving on, we have Shoji, and oh boy. Okay, I'll be honest, this one was the one I was expecting to be my biggest challenge of the whole thing. For context, I actually love Shoji. He's a background classmate, sure, but he's more prominent than someone like Sato or Koda. He has a pretty cool moment in the manga recently, actually, and who could forget his role during that oh-so-iconic forest scene in the second villain invasion, where he's got Deku all bundled up on his back, looking like a particularly feral, untrained dog who just got his favorite toy taken away from it. So with the absurd amount of time I've spent revisiting those scenes, I think it would be ridiculous of me to not know what Shoji looks like at all. The problem is, I mean, I know what he looks like, but not really how he connects together, I guess. Like, I know he's got the multiple limbs that sort of connect together with the weird fleshy bat wing kind of look. He's got that flat head and face mask, he's huge. That's kind of it. Like Koda, I just cannot imagine what his hero outfit is. In that scene I mentioned before, he's not wearing a hero outfit, you know? So this is the second one that I wimped out on, and just stuck him in the default UA uniform. But even that, it doesn't actually fit like a regular uniform would, since his arm situation doesn't really let him have sleeves. I do know that he basically has a tank top as a result of that. Beyond that, I'm working under the assumption that he is just built sort of like a regular, if not very large man below the whole spider arms situation up top. But I guess it doesn't matter in the end, since I ended up with a pose that covered most of his middle with his arms. I wanted to lean into the arms thing since it was probably the hardest about him and I was already going for an easier route. I've actually drawn a character with multiple arms before, Itsy Bitsy from the Spider-Man and Deadpool series. The only difference between them is that Shoji has the sort of batwing membrane stuff going on between the arms, but I've drawn bats before too, so I think I've got it down. It's just a little bit tedious. For his head, I think I made him a bit too round. He has a much flatter head than I remembered, and I already knew it was inhumanly flat. I think I made him a bit too normal? It makes him too boring, and even manages to make him look too busy all at the same time. Like, the back of his head I made too lumpy, where he's got a much simpler shape language than that, and as a result, Horikoshi gives him a much more unique and appealing silhouette than I did here. Sorry I tried to normalize your brick head, Shoji. I like your brick head. I'll do better next time. And for anyone who also doesn't remember Shoji's hero outfit, this is what it looks like. It's not complicated, but completely forgettable, at least to me, apparently. Next, Ida, who might actually have been the hardest one of this whole challenge. I wasn't even worried about him until I got to him and realized how little I remember of his design details. Listen, I know what Ida looks like, but his hero costume. I'm telling you, I was so tempted to just pull a third IDK and go for a regular uniform Ida, but I refused to do 2 in a row, so robot mech body Ida, here I come. And boy do I remember this a lot less well than the other outfits. At least for Shoji or Koda, I knew what the face looked like, but Ida is the opposite, where I can't even get that guaranteed correct since he doesn't even show his face in his hero costume. At least, most of the time he doesn't. Technically, I can just draw his face normal and leave out the helmet part of the design, yet again, but that still feels like losing. I'm a Bakugo stan. I don't give up till my enemies are a mark on the floor. I am drawing that helmet. But speaking of Bakugo though, I will admit that probably way too much of my memory of Ida's costume comes from me staring at these panels way too long. He's an unconventional damsel in distress. The duality of him is unmatched. But yeah, congratulations to Ida Tanya for getting to join the large men who get to carry Bakugo Katsuki Club. It is a surprisingly bigger list than you'd think, and I'm grateful for that, frankly. Of course, I'm biased and prefer it when Deku is the one who gets to do it. Let's pray that he adds to his tally at least one more time before the end of the manga. But enough of that. This is about Ida. Ida and his complicated robot armor. Ugh. I know he has engines on his shoulders and his legs, and I don't think he has them anywhere else. He's got the whole turtleneck thing going on, big elbow and knee pad things that I'm not quite sure the exact shape of or detailing. I am assuming he's just kind of like a knight, but if the knight was cosplaying a race car. So I'm sort of channeling the traits I remember for Aoyama, but making them a bit more clunky and robot-y. For the shoes and knee pad area, I really blanked on the actual shapes and details of it, but for some reason I was so sure that they looked like Katsuki's knee pads, and maybe a bit like Deku's face mask, but it didn't look right, and I just kinda ended up drawing a circle on the knee like Aoyama, fully knowing that I was wrong, but unwilling to think about robot legs anymore. The rest I just kinda left blank, mostly. I got general shapes and segments that I was pretty sure were there, but the details were just not coming to me, and I could not logic them out either. My visual library for robots and car stuff, I'm realizing, is pretty lackluster. I should probably do some studies. Now, I did want to include the helmet, but I still wanted to draw the face, so I did both. He's holding the helmet here, so I can give my memory the test of trying to recreate it, while still having a little fun with this one. As for the details, I remembered I was just sort of envisioning Gallantmon from Digimon. His head mixed with a bike helmet, to be honest. Now tell me that doesn't look similar, at least a little bit. Look, it even has ears in the same place of Ida's exhaust pipes. All I'm saying is that it worked out in the end, and that I'm absolutely onto something when I say that Ida is a Digimon Royal Knight confirmed. So how'd I do? Well, not the best. I tried. I learned that his exhaust pipes start on his ribcage area and don't just stick out of his shoulders like I thought they did. There's no way I would have remembered that shoe design either, having never drawn them or really focused on them before. But the mask I am pleased with, even if I didn't get that quite right either. I think it's more noticeable since it's on the head and not just another part of the body to overlook, so it stayed in my brain a bit better than the rest. So while the outfit part was mostly a major failure, I am also pretty happy with the face, even though that isn't quite correct either. I drew him initially with absurdly large eyes that did not fit him in the slightest, and remembered to make his face more angular so that he looks more like himself and less like a generic anime pretty boy that I was initially heading towards. His hair is a bit wrong, his glasses need more detail, but I mean, how many of you know how to draw Ida's hero costume off the top of your head? You're able to recognize him even if he looks more like a discount class president than the real deal. So I'm not counting this as a total loss. No one even got kidnapped. Kirishima time! Mr. Manly Man who doesn't wear a shirt and hair gels himself little horns every morning to match his bestie. Kirishima's so funny. He really looked in the mirror one day and was like, "It is time for a makeover, girly," and changed his entire look and personality. Good for him. Be who you want to be. For his appearance, though, I have a good idea of what he's got going on. Honestly, drawing this made me realize that he reminds me a lot of Flamemon from Digimon. Sorry, I know I just said that Ida's helmet reminded me of a different Digimon, and maybe it put Digimon in my brain after that, but I stand by it. Look at this guy, he's just furry, less buff Kirishima. From the get-go, I remembered the little eye scar, which I am pretty sure I put on the right side, since I am also pretty sure it's on the opposite side of Todoroki's eye scar. I remember the big tire-like things on his shoulders that I'm not entirely sure what they are or what purpose they serve, but it looks pretty neat anyway. Knowing him, they probably are just for theatrics, like his hair. He's also got a tattered cape-looking thing going on that I am pretty sure ties around his waist. He doesn't wear it like an actual cape, since you can pretty much always see this dude's bare torso, but I'm not sure if it's a cape at that point, or if it's supposed to be like the weathered remains of his shirt that he seems to have broken out of Incredible Hulk style. Which actually might be what it is now that I think about it, since he does wear sleeves, I'm pretty sure, just not the rest of the shirt. Or at least his winter costume has sleeves at least. I think it looks better with the sleeves, so I went that route. He looks less naked and more like he has an actual costume that he finished putting on. Of course, he's got the big, garish MMA belt with the Team Rocket R in the center, and, well, the bottom half of him I admittedly think draws much less attention than the top half, but I'm pretty sure he's got more baggy pants going on down there to sort of match the flow and energy of the low-slung cape. So baggy pants, vague, undefined boots, because I couldn't really remember what Kirishima's shoes looked like. And we're done. Details I got wrong, I was actually really confident about that R belt. I thought it was just a circle with the R in it, but apparently it's just the letter R. I just don't remember that at all for some reason. This surprised me. I really did this one, and I thought I got it completely right. And I did get it pretty much right, but not entirely. I also forgot he has like it's almost like a seat belt that goes across his torso. I don't know if that's also a part of the shirt he tore out of, but I forgot it was there. I don't remember that being there at all. But pretty much everything else I got pretty right. The shoe detailing's not entirely correct, but it's pretty close. It's pretty close. I'm happy. I'm happy with that. Okay, now it's Diaper Boy time. Mineta Grape Juice Minoru, you all know the guy. He's who I was expecting to be the easiest, to be honest, even if I don't really look at him that much if I can help it. It's still a very memorable design, and it's pretty hard for me to mess up that bad. He's got that ball head, the cartoonish gloves and cape, and the big diaper armor, which, I gotta say, I don't know why he did that to himself. If he wanted to be some sexy man, I don't think leaning into the literal baby look was the best choice he could have made. Like, he kinda looks like a sidekick, you know? A little baby sidekick. Truly though, what is there to say about this design? I mean, honestly, I do think it's pretty cute. If Mineta himself wasn't such a little nightmare pervert, he'd honestly have a fun side character role to play. Because when he's not being a freak, he's shown that he's been really emotional and loves his classmates a lot. Him glomming all over Katsuki, of all people, in relief when he's okay is honestly interesting. He clearly also gets along with Deku and Kaminari, he does well in school, he has a lot of potential to be more than a not-so-funny gag character. It's just that that gag he's been assigned to is just supremely unfunny and not at all a gag. He's in the position where his worst stunts really do feel like they outweigh any of his other traits, and I doubt many people are really willing to look past them, especially since the story itself never really seems to have him grow out of that creepy stuff. Oof, okay, no more Mineta discussion to fill the space. This is a drawing challenge, after all. Now, I've got this design pretty much down pat. The only thing I left out was the little dots detailing the top of his diaper. Really not sure what else that shape could be other than that. I also feel like he's got a bigger forehead than I gave him, but beyond that, we're good. Nearing the finish line, we move on to Sero. This is another instance where I shamelessly left out part of an outfit that I knew I wouldn't be able to remember. That's right, I did not include Sero's helmet here. He can join Uraraka's club if it's any consolation. Truthfully, I just didn't think I knew it. I know it's like a bike helmet mixed with a tape dispenser, but the actual pattern and shape of it I really truly could not envision. The concept I could form in my mind, but I couldn't actually see it somehow, if that makes any sense. A big part of me wonders why Sero even has a helmet like that, but I guess if he's swinging around like Spider-Man, then he wants to protect his head if he were like to swing into a building maybe? Fall from a large height? Or maybe he just thought he looked kind of intimidating that way since his actual face is naturally kind of goofy? Whatever reason, I didn't include it, arbitrary point deducted, but at least I did get to draw his goofy face. But I guess the universe wanted to punish me for thinking I was taking an easy route, because when I got to that chest and hip area, I just completely dropped the ball when I did not expect to. I knew he had a sharp, almost mouth-like look to the white part, and that the legs of the suit were pretty much just solid black. But try as I might, I could not conjure up a pattern that actually felt accurate to what my brain was telling me should be there. I ended up spending most of my time on this one trying to make sense of those tape dispensers on his shoulders, though. I thought they were the most notable part of the design, so I wanted to at least get them correct. Unfortunately, I spent way too much time on them, and the entire rest of the outfit suffered because of it. Maybe if I experimented some more, took some more time to look at things, I could have remembered more of the outfit, but after I finished the shoulders, I just wanted this one to be done with. Trying to logic out how his tape dispenser shoulders connected to the circumference of his arms while not being restricting or lacking in depth just took a lot of mental energy out of me, on top of just not being all that fun to draw in the first place. And you know what? That is entirely on me for getting lost in one detail of a drawing rather than focusing on a piece as a whole or taking my time to work on other things before coming back to the thing that was troubling me. It's part of what I personally find interesting about this one, since I thought Sero would be one of the easier ones. I guess because I thought of his plain face and figured, yeah, I can draw that, or the fact that I knew his suit wasn't all that detailed, I thought, as long as I get the tape dispensers, then I'm pretty much good to go. I can see now that that is not an accurate assumption, but I feel like I learned something here, regardless of the final result, so that's a win somewhere. This one I have even less to say than Mineta, somehow. I mean, she's literally invisible. Hagakure! To make it more interesting at least, I decided to draw her face, which we got a reveal for a few months ago. She has those feathery eyelashes and that crazy curly hair. It's very cute, I like her design a lot, so it's unfortunate that we see it so infrequently. Her hair is actually much longer than I drew it here, since Horikoshi's other sketches of her have it going down past her shoulders. I guess that shot that I was remembering from the manga cuts that part off a bit, so I thought it was shorter than it was. Apart from that, I guess the hardest part about this one, if there is a hardest part, would be not mixing up her winter and summer outfits, which just gives her a different glove design, and her sneakers turn into boots, which, as you can see, that's the version I went for. But yeah, this was an easy way to end this exercise. Except, psych, not done yet, as if I could leave Katsuki and Deku out. Me letting go a chance to draw my boys? Not likely. It only makes sense that we save the best for last with the twin pillars of Class 1A. I couldn't help myself, I just had to draw them being all cute with each other, it's just in my blood. Deku being a lovesick little fanboy and Kacchan being his confident, unbothered self who is also secretly a fanboy is my favorite interpretation of them. I feel like I earned it, I had to draw Seito and Mineta. I deserve a self-indulgent little cooldown. Since I don't think there's much to discuss about their designs, as I already know them like the back of my hand, I figured I could just talk about their dynamic for a few minutes instead. Heads up that I am fully caught up on the manga, so I will most likely have some spoilers for anime-onlys going forward. To me, a big part of their dynamic's appeal is the fact that Deku's adoration for Katsuki outweighs literally every other negative bit of history between them. Like, anyone else would have just walked away from Katsuki if they were Deku, but Deku thinks, despite everything, that Katsuki is not only worth his time, but someone he's willing to fight for and hopes to one day fight beside. The "I always chased after you" line and theme is just so emotionally charged, and I love it. Then on the other side, you have Katsuki, who, despite his rough words and actions to keep Deku at arm's length despite his chasing, still only allows himself to be truly, willingly vulnerable around Deku. I love that Katsuki, who is so tactical and shockingly emotionally intelligent, still took so long to understand and accept Deku, who has always been an incomprehensible outlier in Katsuki's worldview, despite Deku being there the whole time. Katsuki saw Deku's truest strengths before he got a quirk, and understood that Deku was a hero, but with the way society raised him, he didn't understand how he could be so heroic, despite, seemingly, having so much less than Katsuki himself. He also didn't, and perhaps still doesn't, understand how Deku can still stick to him after all this time. The line, "I don't expect this to change things" during his apology tells me a lot about how little I think Katsuki realizes that Deku adores him. Because how else could he ever think that a confession like this wouldn't change things between him and Midoriya, "I'm so blessed because Kacchan is finally talking to me again" Izuku? It is so compelling to me how after all this time, they both still just don't seem to understand the gravity of how truly loved they are by the other. Katsuki still doesn't seem to understand that Deku is simply invigorated by Katsuki's very presence, and is unwilling to let him go or stop admiring him when Katsuki has, even at their worst, been a positive aspect of Deku's life. He was a source of constant inspiration, something Deku direly needed and was unafraid to seek out. Even more interesting than that is I don't even think Deku fully realizes how much he loves Kacchan still. Mr. Control Your Heart over here is on incident number 3 of losing his mind over Katsuki, so he's gonna have to face that eventually. But to focus back on Katsuki's feelings again, despite the fact that it took him so long to understand Deku, he always held care and worry for him in his heart, even when he didn't know why he still did. Katsuki carrying around that All Might card that he and Deku both earned together in their childhood says it all. Deku matters to Katsuki just as much as Katsuki matters to Deku. We knew for so long that Deku admired Katsuki, even though he was a jerk in the past. We knew for so long that Deku's breaking point has always been Katsuki and Katsuki's safety. Now, we're finally seeing Katsuki reciprocate that adoration, admiration, and deep-seated trust. We're learning that it's been there the whole time, just hidden away because Katsuki was fearful to lose Izuku one day. And I know that this is a shippy piece that I'm working on here, but even if you view them platonically, it's undeniable that they love each other. I just like that you can easily interpret their canon text as romantic pretty easily if you want to. Overall, their history being complicated and full of misunderstanding is so interesting and compelling because both of them just can't let go, even if most others would have simply cut their losses and moved on. But moving on from each other doesn't benefit either of them. They make each other better, constantly teaching and learning from one another, which in turn raises the bar of literally everyone around them. Narratively, they're set up to fulfill the role that All Might had, only they're doing it in a way that is sustainable and healthy in the long run, both for themselves and society as a whole. It's just so good. Their story is just very emotionally charged and meaningful, and the tension that the narrative builds around them always leads to really satisfying payoffs. It is incredible how excited this story has me to see two dudes hold hands. The build up to it has been insane, and I will not be the same person once it finally happens. On a surface level, I think I just like that Deku is sort of intense and passionate about things, and that applies to his love, which can come off as almost fanatical sometimes, like he's not sure how to handle what he's feeling. Then Katsuki, who feels the same, but is better at masking his enthusiasm about it, and is a bit more reasonable about it since he is shockingly the more emotionally intelligent of the two. It's a funny dynamic and really cute. Deku just being really eager and grateful once Katsuki starts to let him in again is really sweet to me. He wants what he wants, and that's Katsuki. I could talk forever about them, but we're running low on speed paint, so I'll wrap it up here and move on with some final thoughts and questions. After drawing everyone and putting this video together, I'm thinking maybe it would have been a more entertaining watch if I had given myself some sort of time limit rather than an unlimited time frame. Because there was no limit, I took up as much time as I needed to recall details and ended up focusing more heavily on the quality of the drawing more often than the challenge itself. Another downside to my perfectionism is the fact that each recording took more time to showcase than expected, which made the video much longer than intended. Because of that, I considered breaking this video into 2 parts, but ultimately decided against it for simplicity's sake. Still, I'd like to hear everyone's thoughts on things like this so I can get a better idea of what would work best for any future videos. And if you guys like this one, maybe I can do a pro hero version of this challenge or an entirely different series in general. But if you stuck around this long, thank you so much for watching, and please feel free to share with me which drawings you thought were the most or least accurate, or at least the ones that were your favorites regardless of accuracy, and I'll see you in the next video. Thanks for hanging out.